Hey guys, how's it going? So right now I'll be talking about the Strix G18. This one is brand new for 2025 and they completely redesigned it. So I have a lot to talk about with this laptop, and unfortunately it's not all going to be positive. So let's just get right into it. First, as always, got to start off with the build and design, and I'll make it quick. So even though this is a brand new design for 2025, it looks very similar to previous generations. It's hard to really tell it apart, but they did redesign it. The first thing you'll notice, the RGB goes all the way around, which does look really cool. So that is actually a big improvement. The lid, really solid metal. Unfortunately, this is the only metal you'll be feeling in this product. Everything else is plastic. So because I have the regular G18 and not the Scar series, the RGB logo is not illuminated and you don't get that animatrix strip. And around the sides, this brings me to one of my first cons. Both USB Type-C ports are on the left. I like to see one to the left and one to the right. Since Asus did redesign this, they had the opportunity to change that. So that's something I've complained about, and I know other people have as well too. HDMI 2.1 connected to the dedicated GPU, also nice. Oh, I should go back to saying one of these Thunderbolt ports is connected directly to the GPU, which I feel like I'm going to have to start mentioning again this year because not every laptop I've tested seem to have that. I feel like every gaming laptop needs to have at least one display port or USB Type-C port that has display port connected to the dedicated GPU. For a lot of people, including me, that is potentially a deal breaker. I'm going to give big dings from now on if that doesn't happen. Thankfully, I'm not giving a ding to Asus this year. This is their new charging port. This is one way how you'll know that this is new. They've introduced this port with the G16 and G14 from last year. Cool stuff. On the right hand side, you may be looking here and you might be thinking that this is ventilation. I believe these are actually intakes. So hot air doesn't actually blow out of this. And that's one of the best things about this new redesign is there's no more ventilation on the sides. So your hands don't get burnt when you're using a mouse, whether you're a lefty or a righty. So that's good. But the sacrifice is there is now no ports on the back. And actually, that last year, there weren't any ports on the back either. They got rid of that. But you do get much better cooling. I'll get into that a little bit later. I didn't really do much temperature testing and all that stuff. These days, all laptops do really good in terms of temps. But in terms of noise, though, this is one of the more quieter laptops out there. I was really impressed about that. I'm getting the full 165 watts on the GPU, and the CPU does what it needs to do. Could go up to 100 watts if it needs to. And I'm not saying that this is a quiet laptop. I mean, this is a gaming laptop. It does get loud, but it's not nearly as loud as the other ones when it's running in its full turbo mode. And even the sound that comes out of this laptop isn't that bad too. It just sounds like air gently coming out through the chassis instead of something whirling or loud or anything like that. So that's one thing that's also been great. I know I'm kind of jumping around in this video, but since I'm talking about the ventilation, I just figured I might as well talk about that because I know I might forget. All right. And this is the new party trick this year, and everyone's going crazy about it, that you're able to upgrade the back easily and it's completely toolless. And you know what? I get it. I mean, that is a cool feature, but realistically, like, how often are people going into their laptops? If you're somebody who goes in there frequently to clean the fans, etc., then I get it. That's cool. But if you only buy your laptop and then upgrade the RAM or upgrade the storage when you get it, or maybe a few years down the road, you're only going to do that like once or twice through the life cycle of your product, of your laptop. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like this feature. It is a great feature, but it's not as big of a deal as all the people have been making it out to be, including Asus, because like I said, I rarely ever go into my laptop. So as cool as that is, I wouldn't say choose this over a different laptop just because of this feature. But anyway, moving on. So now let's open it up. And this is where things become a little bit unhappy for me. This is made out of plastic. It doesn't feel like a nice high quality plastic. It just feels like kind of shiny and cheap. I mean, Asus makes good products. I'm pretty sure this will last its time, but this is in the premium category of laptops in price, and this is one of Asus's flagship laptops. So I would have liked a better build quality. There is some flex, Not too much. It's fine. But I just don't like the way the shiny plastic looks. At least last year when you got the Scar, when you upgraded, the plastic was a little bit translucent and it felt a little bit more high quality. Maybe something like akin more to like an acrylic or something. This just feels like straight up plastic. I think that's a bit disappointing. They had an opportunity to redesign this and they did not do that part. All right, so continue on. I feel like this keyboard is just okay. It feels membraney. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It's perfectly fine. But again, for a premium product, it's not class leading as it should be, even though this is priced high up there. So that's just another little knock. But if Asus does want to win some points, they're going to get it back with this trackpad. This is probably one of the best trackpads on one of these gaming focused laptops. And when I say gaming focused laptops, I mean like these thick and heavy boys and not some of the other thinner, lighter laptops that are also trying to compete with like the MacBooks or like the premium Ultrabooks. This is not trying to compete with those, and usually they skimp on the trackpad. They did not do that with this. It's glass. It glides incredibly well. It has a nice press. It's nicely dampened. It's actually silent when you press. One of the highlights of this laptop. I know it sounds weird to be gushing over the trackpad, but usually on these thicker and heavier gaming laptops, the trackpad is usually pretty bad. There is a lot of good attributes about this laptop, and the speakers is one of them. This is only the Strix version. The Strix Scar has additional speakers and better sound, but these two speakers put out really good sound. Let's do a little speaker test. It's gonna get pretty loud in here. I do have a Scar coming in, so I'm interested to compare the two, but this on its own, I think because the speakers are front-facing, which is something you never see in a laptop, it does a really good job, and the surround sound effect is good too. I've noticed Dolby is among the best at that, so really happy with these speakers, so that is a big highlight of this product. One thing I will say though is battery and performance. I mean, I didn't run any benchmarks on battery. I don't think at the end of the day that's the point of these laptops, but overall general day-to-day performance on battery has been incredibly good. It's not something that you would typically see from these type of laptops. So there's something that Asus is doing to really leverage the power of both the CPU and GPU at the same time, and I have the resource monitor going on, so it's using only 9 watts, and everything is running pretty good too. And as you can see, it's taking 11 watts from the GPU, which you don't always see it being used. So I think Asus did some work. When you're an Optimus, they've tuned it to where you're getting really good performance just in day-to-day Windows tasks, which has been really nice to see, and it's been enjoyable to use compared to all the gaming laptops, which usually go to a crawl the moment you take off the power. So overall, that's been one of my favorite things to use about this laptop. I'm not married to the plug. I mean, I'm not going to say that the battery life is going to be great though. It's still using a lot of power, so I'm at 59%, and it's saying I have an hour and 24 minutes left, so that's about right. You can expect about 3 hours, 4 hours max using this laptop comfortably. And I did like edit some photos and videos on this, and the laptop moved along fine, which is not something I could say with these other Core Ultra 9 275HX style of chips. All right, so next let's talk about the screen. This is not the Scar version, so you're not getting the mini LED. You're just getting a regular IPS level screen. So in today's standards, that might not be acceptable. This is still $3,000 at Best Buy before the tariffs. I think at $3,000, you should start to expect a better screen, at least mini LED. And the mini LED screen on the Scar that I had last year is absolutely incredible. One of the best I've ever seen. But what we do have here is a good IPS panel. So of course you're getting 100% sRGB. Most of the coverage of DCI-P3 is like 99. That's pretty much close to perfect. Adobe RGB was a bit on the lower side, and so was Rec 2020, but this does not support HDR, so not a concern about that. And I think that could be a detriment to this laptop that it does not support HDR, even though it does support Dolby Vision. So it's a bit misleading on the marketing there. But brightness. Okay, so before we get into brightness, there's this bug I've been experiencing, and I didn't know if I wanted to talk about it or not because they could have addressed it by the time you get yours. If you're looking at this a few months down the road, they typically do. Asus usually pretty much irons out their bugs as time goes on. That's why I don't mind using their products long term, even though at launch sometimes they could be buggy. But anyway, I have noticed when you're an Optimus, the brightness, and even when you switch over to advanced Optimus too, I've noticed that the brightness randomly just goes down and decreases down to like 300 nits. So, and I haven't been able to replicate it. It doesn't happen all the time. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you want to completely alleviate that problem, just go into the Armory Crate and go to the dedicated GPU mode. They changed it so many times. That mode is now just called Ultimate. So you'll just have to do that. It'll ask you to restart. I'm not going to do that right now for the sake of this video. But if you're having random brightness fluctuations and the laptop seems to be dimming and you're unable to control it, just go to ultimate mode until they find a fix. If you go to ultimate mode, you'll be using the dedicated GPU for just about everything, but it'll tank your battery life even more than it already is going to be tanked because of this specific type of device. So anyway, once you do get full brightness, you're getting a really bright screen, well over 500 nits. The contrast ratio is really good for this type of screen, especially being that it's so bright. Usually the brighter the screen, the worse the contrast ratio gets because you're not able to have any type of local dimming on the black areas. But it stays above 1500 to 1, which I do find to be acceptable. Black levels is 0.36. Usually when you're looking at a 500 nit plus display that's not mini LED or OLED, black levels are usually in the 0.40. So this being down to 0.36 does make it look good. It's not going to look nearly as good as a mini LED screen or an OLED screen, but you know what? This is just what we're working with. If you're not happy about this, there are other options. And one thing I need to mention is the backlight bleed is unusually bad on this panel. I know it varies by unit to unit, and sometimes it does go away after a while. Last year's Strix and the Scar from 2 years ago before they had their mini LED had that issue, but after a few months it just kind of went away on its own. So I don't know if that'll happen this time, but I hope it does. Next, let's talk about the performance. So I think this is the part where things get a little bit more sour, at least to me. First, let's talk about the TDP of this laptop, and this will help tell the story about the performance. When I had the HP Omen 16, I was consistently getting a total of 240 watts when I was running Cyberpunk, and I like using Cyberpunk because it's a very demanding game. The developers tuned it to take advantage of both the CPU and the GPU. Whatever you have, it'll take it and it'll use all the power of your system to do its best. So 240 watts on the Omen, and in this one, this is an 18-inch laptop with a brand new vapor chamber, all their cooling, etc. Even on the highest manual mode with everything cranked up, I'm only able to get 216 watts out of this. And this does result in performance loss compared to the 16-inch Omen 16 that I tested and potentially other laptops as I get them. And I was looking at some other reviews from the bigger guys, and they were coming across situations where last year's Scar was performing better than this one. And I think that's a big reason why. I don't know why Asus did that. I know I mentioned before that the fans are much quieter and it's a much more pleasant experience in terms of the fan noise and overall system noise of this laptop. But man, I really wish there was an option for me to crank things up a little bit more. Overall, that's been consistent. So I think because of that, I can just blast through some of these charts because it's kind of telling the same story. Overall, you're getting a 5% reduction in frames compared to some of the other 5080 laptops that I checked out. I don't know what the Scar will perform like. From what I understand, they should be identical in terms of cooling and performance. The changes are more for the screen and cosmetic changes that shouldn't really matter for performance. So I'm a bit bummed out about that. And 5% is not a crazy amount of performance loss. I mean, you probably won't notice that day to day, but it is something. And I think that is something to be considered. And especially if you compare the 5090 to a 5080. When I was comparing the Omen Max, that was a 10% difference between the 5080 and the 5090. Now, if you're comparing the Gigabyte Aorus AT and 5090 versus this 5080, now all of a sudden that becomes a 15% difference. For some people, that could be worth spending the money to go with a Gigabyte to get a full tilt 5090. I don't know how the 5090 will perform in this G18 or in the Strix version. So that's another thing too. So based off of the way I test, which doesn't really tell the full story, I don't test frame time, and I don't test for latency, and I don't test for 1% lows. And I kind of wish I did, because even though you're seeing in some situations this performs worse or in par with last year's laptops, when you're actually gaming on it, this does feel a lot better. So the prices are similar. Always go for the 2025 version. And I don't have any affiliate links or anything like that in these videos. Like, I don't want you guys to think I'm just trying to push you towards the new laptops or anything like that. So this is just my general opinion. If you can spring for 2025's model, you are going to get an overall better experience. I just haven't really been showcasing that in these charts. But anyway, overall, that's kind of been performance. But yeah, I mean, overall, like, this is not very much of an exciting review, because it's not so much of an exciting product except for a few things, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. This is a good laptop. I think if you're an ROG fan, you're going to be very happy. If you are brand agnostic, I think it's worthwhile checking out some of the competition, because, like I said, that Gigabyte that I got is really good. The HP Omen, I would say, if you're looking at 16 inches, is an overall better laptop than this is. And I know there's a lot of RG fanboys that won't like to hear that, but if you like this video, thanks a lot. I'm almost at 10,000 subscribers. Help me get there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys. Bye.